Hi, my name is Maya Sullivan. I'm a registered nurse that currently works for My Michigan Health, but during my off time I like to volunteer promoting health in the community. And today I would like to talk about a topic that's near to my heart because it's something that I have experienced, and I've had family members that have struggled with it and have many friends, and I've seen lots of patients that struggle with it too. And that topic is depression. First of all, I would like to say it's good to know what the symptoms of depression are because we might have it and not know it. A lot of people don't know that they have depression. So here are 9 of the symptoms. The first one is feeling sad, empty, hopeless, or irritable. Now, women tend to feel the sadness more than men. They sometimes will cry for no reason. Men will most often feel empty. There used to be a time when there's a phase in men's lives that's called a midlife crisis, when men would all of a sudden get a brand new sports car or have a extramarital affair, and this is a symptom of depression. We used to think that's a normal part of a man's life, but it's not normal. It's actually a symptom of depression, and that's something that men sometimes do to try to fill the sense of emptiness. And then children will be often more irritable. The next symptom is apathy or anhedonia, and this is when a person loses interest in things they usually enjoy. They don't like being around people. They don't like their hobbies anymore. I remember my sister used to have a dish that she would have me make for her. It was a favorite dish, and before she took her life, I remember prior to that she would eat this dish I made for her and take a couple of bites and didn't want the rest of it. And so she was experiencing the symptom and I didn't know. So I wish back then I had known about the symptoms. I may have done things differently and she may still be with us today. The next symptom is psychomotor agitation or retardation. And that's when a person is either moving slower than usual or they are more restless and fidgety. Sleep disturbances is a symptom, and that could be where a person just can't get to sleep or they're sleeping too much, sometimes all day and all night. The next symptom is weight or appetite disturbances, having no appetite or just can't stop eating and eating too much and gaining weight. The next one is cognitive decline. That's when we just can't think correctly. We can't concentrate on things like reading a book or watching TV. The next symptom is excessive guilt or a sense of worthlessness. Then there's fatigue. Sometimes fatigue can be so severe that a person just doesn't have the energy to even just wake up in the morning, get out of bed, brush their teeth, comb their hair, let alone work a job. And the last one is suicidal ideation. This is when depression progresses and someone starts thinking that it's just not worth it to try to live anymore. According to the DSM-5, which is a manual that providers use to diagnose major depressive disorder, a person has to have 5 or more of these symptoms for at least 2 weeks for major depression. But we can have different levels of depression if we have some of these symptoms in a mild or moderate way. So you can see by this graph that suicide rates are increasing in the nation, and you can see from the pink line, which is Michigan, that Michigan's rates are higher than the nation's rates. So this means that we have a lot of work to do to combat this problem. I chose to show this picture because I think this is such a great illustration of depression. When people are depressed, they're like a dry, wilted, lonely flower that is not able to exude the fragrance and the beauty that God has created them for. Depression has also been called the leading cause of disability around the world. This is because people with depression, besides not having the energy to keep a job, they don't have the mental stamina to face the workplace challenges or to get along with people that they work with. This is Dr. Neil Nedley. He has spent many years helping people to get out of depression. He wrote several books. one which is called Depression: The Way Out, and he has been very successful in helping people with depression. When he became a physician early on, he wasn't focused on mental health like he is now, but he noticed that a lot of his patients were having symptoms that didn't have a cause. So for example, someone might have stomach pains and tests would reveal that they did not have any stomach issues. And so what he found out was that these people were actually suffering from depression. And so at the time, the cause of depression wasn't known at all, and people were just being prescribed medications to alleviate their symptoms. But he wanted to do something more than that. So he researched and found out what the causes of depression are. He found about 100 causes of depression and categorized them into 10 categories, which he calls hits to the brain. And these are the hits. The first one is genetic, the second one is developmental, the third one is lifestyle, there's a circadian rhythm hit, an addiction hit, nutrition hit, toxic hit, social complicated grief hit, medical condition hit, and the frontal lobe hit. And what he found out is that when people have 4 of these 10 hits, that's when they get depressed. Now what's interesting is the first 2 hits, the genetic hit and the developmental hit, that has to do with our body makeup, our genes, and also the way we were raised. So if someone had a traumatic upbringing in childhood, they would have the developmental hit. Or if depression runs in the family, they would probably have the genetic hit. And these are 2 that we can't change. But the good news is the rest of these hits are alterable. And so just because we might have the gene for depression or we didn't have the best upbringing, we can still not be depressed if we focus on the other 8 hits. So Dr. Nedley also developed a test that is available to everyone. There is a community program called the Depression and Anxiety Recovery Program that he developed that people can do as a group or online. And when they do take that class, there is a test they can take called the DAT test, the Nedley DAT test. And you don't have to, though, be in the class to take this test. Anyone can go online at Nedley-DAAT.com. And what this test does is it helps you to see if you have any of these hits. And if you do, you know that you can target them and recover from depression. So, how do we combat depression? We have to boost our brain strength. And so today I want to talk about the ways we can do that. And the things that I share with you are what Dr. Nedley shares in his program. The first strategy for combating depression is light. So light is something that we don't have very much of in the winter. That's why a lot of people have seasonal affective disorder, which is what you have when there's not much light in the days are shorter. A lot of people go to work in the morning before the sun comes up, and when they go home from work, the sun has already set, and so serotonin levels start decreasing and they develop the seasonal depression during the winter. For people who struggle with that, they can use light therapy. There are boxes that are sometimes called happy lights. I've seen people use these happy lights. You have to make sure that they are 10,000 lux, and because some of them are not that strong. And you have to make sure to use them correctly, because I found that most people don't know how to use them correctly. So make sure it's 10,000 lux. Make sure you use it for 30 to 45 minutes every morning before 7 a.m. You want the box to be about 18 inches away from your face, shining at a slight angle towards the eyes. You don't want to look directly at it, the same way you don't want to look directly at the sun. And you have to do it consistently, and this boosts your serotonin levels. And I brought mine here to show you what I do. So they come in sizes like this one where it's very small. It's kind of like a tablet. You can take it with you if you travel. And it's very bright. And so I put mine in the morning. I do a lot of reading first thing in the morning, and I put it right here and face it towards my eyes, sort of at an angle towards the nose, for about 30 to 45 minutes. And that's the correct way to use it. I've seen patients get light boxes and they think it's supposed to be the sun, and they have it standing up and shining on them from the back or something, and it doesn't work that way. So make sure if you use a light box, use it correctly. The second strategy is getting quality sleep. When we have quality sleep, it's between 9 and 10 at night till about 6 o'clock in the morning. So I wanted to clarify what quality sleep is. Because some people with depression, they sleep maybe from 2 a.m. till 10 a.m. and that doesn't repair the body and the brain the way quality sleep does. And so you can see here that quality sleep repairs and restores the neurons and brain cells. It increases mental alertness, concentration, and creative thinking. It processes and stores new information. It clears out the metabolic waste products that accumulate during the day. And this is very important because they're finding out that people with dementia have a history of not sleeping well, and the beta amyloid plaques that build up in the brain do not get squeezed out like they're supposed to, and they see high levels of those things in the brains of people with dementia. Now, if we don't have enough sleep, we are more likely to have mood swings, depression, stress, and impulsive behavior. The next strategy is water. Water is needed to create the hormones and transmitters that control our thoughts, feelings, and actions. It's vital for the lymphatic system to be able to clear the toxins from the brain, especially while we're sleeping, what I was just talking about. It boosts the blood flow that increases the delivery of oxygen and nutrients to the brain cells and flushes out metabolic waste. And it helps the neurons efficiently transmit electrical and chemical signals. And if we don't have enough water, we have difficulty concentrating, our memory's not as good, we have mental fogginess, slower processing, we have increased irritability, stress, and fatigue, and we are at a higher risk for getting headaches and migraines. And it's harder for us to pay attention and have reaction time with complex tasks. Our brain is made up of water, 75%, and so it's very important to keep it well hydrated to function well. Exercise is an important strategy for brain health. It increases the blood flow and nutrient delivery that enhances cognitive function. It stimulates the release of growth factors that support neuron health, helps us with memory and learning. It stimulates the release of neurotransmitters that improve our mood and decrease stress and lower our anxiety. And it strengthens the brain structure and prevents cognitive decline. And it promotes better sleep. We sleep better when we exercise during the day, and we know the benefits of sleep. The next strategy is fresh air. Fresh, pure air that has negative ions are good for combating depression. It increases the oxygen levels in the brain so that it can function, grow, and heal, improves concentration and memory, boosts our mood. If we're out in the fresh air for only 20 to 30 minutes, that can significantly lower cortisol levels, and that's what makes us feel stress. It reduces mental fatigue, especially with stuck thoughts. So for people who are very brainy and do a lot of either schoolwork or a lot of thinking in their jobs, it's good to take a break to go out in the fresh air. It increases the gray matter of the prefrontal cortex that's important for planning and regulating actions. And along with fresh air, we have to make sure to take it in. So Dr. Nedley encourages deep breathing exercises throughout the day. And to breathe deeply, he suggests breathing 6 times a minute. So 6 times a minute, which is 60 seconds, means taking a breath for every 10 seconds. To do that, we have to breathe in for 5 seconds, like this. And breathe out for 5 seconds. So when we breathe that slowly and that deeply, we get our brains nice and oxygenated. Whole plant foods is a good strategy for combating depression. Whole plant foods are loaded with nutrients that are linked to lower levels of depression and anxiety. The high fiber and bioactive compounds in whole plant foods decreases the inflammation that's associated with neurodegenerative diseases. Walnuts, flax, and chia seeds provide omega-3s, which are crucial for neuron membranes and cognitive function. Leafy greens are rich in nutrients that slow cognitive decline and enhances memory. Berries are packed with antioxidants that reduces the oxidative stress that impairs focus and damaged brain cells. Complex carbs stabilize blood sugar and supports the production of serotonin. So these days there's a fear, it seems like, of carbs. And I want to encourage people, don't be afraid to eat carbs, but eat the complex carbs, because that's what the brain functions on, is carbohydrates. And if we don't get enough, we are making ourselves at an increased risk for mental decline. So serotonin, what is serotonin? This is sometimes called the happy hormone. It's a chemical that carries messages between nerve cells in the brain. It plays a key function in mood, learning, memory, and happiness, and plays a key role in the melatonin production that is needed for us to get good sleep at night. And it is made from tryptophan. So tryptophan, where do you get tryptophan from? This is what people usually think about as a good source of tryptophan, and it is true that turkey has a lot of tryptophan, but it is not the kind of tryptophan that the brain can use, because the brain needs carb sources. So a better source is tofu. Now this is a tofu steak, but you can make tofu in lots of different ways. It really doesn't have a flavor, so you can prepare it and season it and flavor it however way you want. It can be used to make desserts or to have for breakfast as scrambled tofu. I've had it in lots of different ways, and it can be very delicious. Now there's also a lot of attention now about the gut microbiome. We're learning that our gut bacteria makeup is very important for our health. Now serotonin is 5% of the serotonin we have is in our brain, and the rest of it actually is in our gut. And so it's important that we have a healthy gut to have a healthy brain. And what makes the gut full of healthy bacteria is actually whole plant foods, because the good germs, the good bacteria in our guts, they thrive on the fiber in whole plant foods, and studies show that people have less depression and less other diseases when they have a healthy gut that's fed by whole plant foods. This gentleman is Phineas Gage. He is someone who he was a foreman for a railroad company back in the 1800s, and in 1848 he experienced an accident at work where an explosion caused the iron rod to shoot up through his head, going up through his left cheekbone. As you can see in this picture, it damaged his eye, and it shot up through the top of his head. And this picture shows exactly the way that rod went through. And he survived this accident, actually. And he was a subject of study. We learned a lot from what he went through, because before this accident, he was a faithful, church-going gentleman. He was good to his wife. He was a good worker. He was a productive citizen of society. But after this accident, he was a changed man. He left his wife, he started going to the bars, and he joined a circus. And so what this taught us is that the front part of our brains, which is called the frontal lobe, is where we have our reasoning power, our morality, and that's where our spirituality is seated. And if it's damaged, that really affects who we are and how we behave and how we feel. So that leads us to the next strategy for boosting our brain health and combating depression is to protect our brains. So do we all have to wear hard hats to protect our brains? Well, maybe sometimes, but we can do other things to protect our brains from injury, especially our frontal lobes. And these are a list of things that damage the frontal lobe. Drugs such as alcohol, nicotine, caffeine, marijuana, illicit drugs, certain prescription drugs, heavy metals, chemicals and toxins, refined sugars and fructose, artificial sweeteners, regular TV and movie watching, certain types of music, and faulty thinking actually damages our brain. The faulty thinking has to do with the neuronal pathways that happen whenever there's a negative thought pattern, and as the thoughts are repeated, that neuronal pathway strengthens and it actually changes the structure of our brain. But if we replace those with positive and true thought patterns, we can actually re-change the structure of our brain to be a more healthy brain. So thoughts are a very important thing to guard, because our thoughts are what creates our feelings. And if we have erroneous thoughts, it will lead to erroneous feelings and depression. So Dr. Nedley also encourages a therapy called cognitive behavioral therapy. And this is an example of a situation where you would implement cognitive behavioral therapy. The idea is that you catch your thoughts and challenge them if they're negative, and change them if they're not true, so that they don't lead to negative feelings. So for example, if you're a student and you failed a test at school, a depressed person or someone with a pattern of faulty thinking would automatically think, I'm worthless and stupid. And then that thought will lead to negative feelings of depression. Or the other option is you fail a test and you challenge that thought, and instead you think, I'm smart, but I didn't study for this test, but I can do better. And that doesn't lead to depression. So guarding our thoughts is an important way to protect our brains. The last strategy I want to talk about is the Word of God. The Bible and its transforming and creative power is very powerful in combating depression. And studies show that it activates the prefrontal cortex and calms the amygdala. That's the part of the brain where anxiety and stress comes from. It rewires the neural pathways, replacing negative, fearful, toxic thought patterns. And when we're memorizing and meditating, that mental workout actually improves cognitive flexibility, memory, and function. And it manages emotional turmoil, increases focus and mental clarity. And the things that the Word of God encourages to do, like having an attitude of gratitude, boosts serotonin and dopamine, while doing things such as implementing forgiveness, reduces emotional tension. It has been shown by studies that when it comes to gratitude, having a gratitude journal is very powerful for helping us to be happier people. It activates that prefrontal cortex that regulates emotion and relieves stress, and consistent practice of keeping a gratitude journal releases the feel-good neurotransmitters, which immediately boost mood and enhances long-term happiness. And it rewires the brain that is fixated on negative thoughts and breaks that habit of negative rumination that we were talking about. It reduces levels of cortisol, which is the stress hormone, and allows for better handling of emotional setbacks. So to review the brain-boosting strategies, they are light, sleep, water, exercise, fresh air, whole plant foods, protecting the brain, and the Word of God. So I want to leave you with this verse from the Bible that I think is an encouragement. And I also want to leave you with an encouraging thought that was shared by Dr. Nedley. If you have depression, don't be discouraged and don't think low of yourselves. If you follow these principles and overcome depression, you become a more resilient person than the average person. And this has been shown by research that people who have been depressed and have overcome depression are more successful in life than those who have never been depressed. And so when depression is beat, the person can have a fulfilling and happy life, have the energy to overcome challenges, look forward to what the day has to offer, have meaningful relationships, and be happier people the way God created us to be. And Isaiah 35 verse 1 says, "The wilderness and the solitary place shall be glad, and the desert shall rejoice and blossom as the rose." If you want to contact me for more information about how to beat depression or any other health topic, you can reach me at SullivanMaya70@gmail.com, and I would be more than happy to talk to you. So thank you for listening, and I hope you have a blessed journey towards better health.